Hello and welcome. In today's video, we're going to showcase and demonstrate the progress of RPCS3 over the past 6 months. Throughout the year, we've had 2 major updates, and we're going to talk about them now. The first was called LTO, which promised gains of up to 200% on Linux, and was announced as something that would soon arrive on Windows as well. And just this week, it was announced that they're working on Vulkan 1.2 implementation, which according to the developers, will also bring performance improvements and fixes, something we'll discuss after a word from our sponsor. If you want to buy original games while saving a lot, check out Instant Gaming, the digital store that sells games for various platforms, such as PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo Switch. Get games of all genres with discounts of up to 95%. You'll also find a variety of gift cards and credits for other services. You can pay for your order through your credit card on a website with a 4.7 rating on Trustpilot. You're buying games directly from Instant Gaming, not from other retailers. If you encounter any issues, Instant Gaming offers 24/7 support. And this month, Instant Gaming is offering a great discount on the newly released Monster Hunter Wilds, with up to 51% off, ensuring the lowest historical price for the game. Check out the price comparison with Steam's pricing. What are you waiting for to save? Links in the description. This year, many influencers have been saying that 2025 is the year of RPCS3, with tons of innovations and various performance improvements. However, the emulator's changelogs only mention the implementation of hundreds of PRs, without specifying real performance gains or improvements in problematic games. That's why I'm making this video, to show you the reality of how much the emulator has truly evolved in the past 6 months. Let's start with LTO. This feature arrived first on Linux at the end of March. The update mainly affected games that don't suffer from PPU or SBU bottlenecks and promised general improvements. They advertised gains of up to 200%, and guys, nowadays, to see a 200% boost, you basically need to rewrite how the emulator processes games, or adopt a brand new video API. Even so, the gains were decent. In screenshots shared by the RPCS3 team themselves, on Linux, Ninja Gaiden jumped from 172 to 204 FPS with LTO enabled. That's a real gain of around 18.6%, as you can see on screen. With that, the community became excited about this feature coming to Windows, as 95% of users are on that platform. And now, LTO is already available in the master build, meaning any updated version of RPCS3 has it. Later in this video, we'll compare versions with and without this feature to see if the gains hold up. Another feature announced this week is the emulator's graphics API migration, from Vulkan 1.0 to Vulkan 1.2. The devs promised performance gains and visual fixes in some titles. On that note, it's worth remembering I've already seen Sumi using Vulkan 1.3 and Eden supporting Vulkan 1.4. And based on my tests with those emulators, there wasn't a significant performance improvement. Updating the API isn't a bad thing, quite the opposite. But the problem is how this kind of news gets passed on to the community, sometimes sounding more revolutionary than it really is. Without further ado, I picked some hardware-intensive games so we could see if there was real progress or regression between emulator versions 6 months apart. We start with God of War III. I chose a scene with many elements being rendered at once, typically the kind of scenario where RPCS3 struggles due to the PS3's complex CPU and the way the emulator simulates it. Although we're still under 60 FPS, we achieved an average above 40 FPS. Keep in mind that on the original console, this area ran at only 30. Comparing versions, the old build had an average of 44 FPS, while the new one reached 48 FPS, a real gain of around 10%. The second game was Gran Turismo 5, one of the latest entries to be added to RPCS3's compatibility list. Despite being one of the GTs with less content, it demands a lot from the hardware. Right away, we noticed the initial shader compilation is much faster in the new emulator version. To give you an idea, it used to take 5 to 10 minutes to enter the game for the first time. Now it takes about 2 minutes. Of course, installing the emulator on an SSD helps, but the new version deserves credit on its own. Speaking of performance, we had an average of 134 FPS on the older version compared to 146 FPS on the updated one, a gain of about 9%. Gran Turismo 6 also benefited from the shader loading improvements, just like GT5. However, this time there were some visual glitches, with a green overlay appearing even with the RPCS3 team's recommended settings. In terms of performance, we saw the same pattern as in God of War III. The old version averaged 44 FPS, while the new one reached 48 FPS, once again, about a 10% gain. In Killzone 3, we had our first tie, both emulator versions delivered an average of 120 FPS. There was higher RAM usage on the latest build, but that may have been caused by a browser running in the background. Since I don't have a record and don't remember whether it was open or not, let's just call this one a total draw. A challenging game that previously could only be run on custom builds, but is now playable even on the master version of RPCS3 for those with a CPU released in the last 4 years, is Metal Gear Solid 4. While Konami still hasn't announced an official PC remake, we're already getting solid performance here. The latest emulator build delivered an average of 114 FPS, compared to 99 on the older version, a gain of over 15 FPS. Just an important heads up, enabling high FPS in this game without the proper patches can cause disk read errors, which will completely crash the emulator. Another title that saw considerable improvements was Ratchet & Clank Future: A Crack in Time. In addition to the gains from LTO and the new Vulkan API, this game also benefited from a specific optimization that brought a noticeable boost in performance. However, it's still not fully playable and may crash randomly. A shame, since it's one of the PS3's most amazing exclusives. In terms of numbers, the older version of the emulator reached 130 FPS, while the new one hit 150 FPS, a gain of more than 11%. In the end, our conclusion is, unlike what some influencers have been spreading with clickbait titles, RPCS3 hasn't had explosive improvements as promised. However, an average of over 10% gain in several games is still extremely positive, especially for an emulator that's already mature and has little room for massive performance leaps, precisely because of the PlayStation 3's complex CPU and how it's emulated. That whole story about a 200% performance increase, unfortunately, didn't pan out, not on Linux, and definitely not on Windows. So be careful with what you consume out there, so you don't end up falling for fake hype. If you like this kind of video and want me to do something similar with other emulators, let me know in the comments. I could easily turn this into a series. And of course, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you want to keep getting honest and straightforward content about the world of emulation. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.